Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Landon hummed to himself as he arranged the bouquet of roses on the dining room table. The sweet scent filled the air, mingling with the aroma of scented candles he'd carefully placed around the room. He stepped back, admiring his handiwork with a satisfied nod. Everything was perfect for Myra's return from her girls' trip tomorrow. As he moved to the kitchen to start dinner prep, the sound of Myra's voice drifted from the foyer. "I've got everything, babe. Don't worry." Landon's brow furrowed. He hadn't heard her come in. Wiping his hands on a dish towel, he headed toward the front door. Myra stood there, overnight bag slung over her shoulder, phone pressed to her ear. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw him. "Oh, Landon, I didn't think you'd be home," she said, quickly ending her call. He raised an eyebrow. "I thought your trip wasn't until tomorrow?" Myra laughed, the sound a bit too high-pitched. "Oh, silly me. I got the dates mixed up. It starts today. I was just on the phone with Zoe. She's already waiting at the airport." Landon's shoulders slumped. "I had plans for us tonight." "I'm so sorry, honey." Myra pecked him on the cheek. "Rain check." Before he could respond, she was already halfway up the stairs. "I've got to grab a few things I forgot. Be back down in a jiffy." Landon watched her go, a nagging feeling in his gut. Something felt off, but he pushed the thought aside. This was Myra, his loving, devoted wife of 7 years. He was being paranoid. "Have a great time," he called up after her. "I love you. Love you too." Her voice floated down, muffled and distracted. 10 minutes later, she was gone in a whirlwind of perfume and hasty goodbyes, leaving Landon standing alone in the foyer. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. So much for his surprise. Well, he might as well make the most of his unexpected free time. The house could use a good cleaning. Landon spent the next few hours tackling their shared to-do list. He scrubbed the bathroom, did laundry, and vacuumed every nook and cranny. By late afternoon, he found himself facing the final frontier, the dreaded hall closet. He yanked open the door, grimacing at the avalanche of coats, shoes, and miscellaneous junk threatening to spill out. "How do we accumulate so much stuff?" he muttered, rolling up his sleeves. Landon methodically sorted through the chaos, creating piles for donations and trash. As he pushed aside Myra's bulky winter coats, his hand brushed against something solid tucked in the far corner. Curious, he reached back and pulled out a plain cardboard box. "What's this?" he wondered aloud, setting it on the floor. The box was unmarked, about the size of a shoebox. Landon's fingers hesitated on the lid. It was probably just old photos or knickknacks Myra had forgotten about. But why hide it in the back of the closet? Taking a deep breath, Landon opened the box. His heart stopped. Inside lay a stack of letters, their creamy envelopes tied with a red ribbon. Next to them were 2 burner phones and a small pile of photographs. With trembling hands, Landon picked up the top photo. It showed Myra, his Myra, locked in a passionate embrace with a man he didn't recognize. Her head was thrown back in ecstasy, the stranger's lips on her neck. "No," Landon whispered, ball rising in his throat. "This can't be real." But as he flipped through the other photos, the horrible truth became undeniable. Each image was more explicit than the last, showcasing Myra in various states of undress with not just one, but several different men. Landon's vision blurred, his chest constricting. He fumbled for one of the letters, tearing it open. "My dearest Myra," it began. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about the way you..." Landon crumpled the letter, unable to read more. He grabbed another and another, each one filled with flowery declarations of lust and detailed accounts of clandestine meetings. 7 years, he choked out, rage building inside him. 7 fucking years of lies. He hurled the box against the wall, scattering its damning contents across the floor. Landon sank to his knees, his entire world imploding around him. How long had this been going on? How many men? The letters and photos suggested multiple ongoing affairs, not just a single moment of weakness. As the initial shock began to fade, a cold fury took its place. Landon's hands clenched into fists. He'd trusted Myra completely, given her everything. And this was how she repaid him? No, he wouldn't let her get away with this. Taking several deep breaths, Landon forced himself to think rationally. He couldn't confront Mira immediately. She'd only deny everything and find a way to twist the situation. He needed a plan. With grim determination, Landon gathered the scattered evidence. He photographed each letter and image with his phone, creating a digital record. The burner phones went into his pocket. He'd figure out how to access them later. As he worked, his mind raced. One of the men in the photos looked vaguely familiar. A nagging suspicion formed. Could it be someone from his past? A colleague who had always seemed a little too friendly with Mira? Landon's jaw clenched. If his hunch was correct, this betrayal ran even deeper than he'd initially thought. Once everything was documented, he carefully replaced the box exactly as he'd found it. Mira couldn't know he was onto her. Not yet. Exhausted and emotionally drained, Landon collapsed onto the couch. His phone buzzed a text from Mira. Having a blast with the girls. Miss you. Hugs and kisses. Landon stared at the screen, disgust churning in his stomach. More lies. He wondered which of her lovers she was really with right now. He typed out a response, forcing himself to sound normal. Glad you're having fun. Love you. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. Landon tossed the phone aside, burying his face in his hands. How had he been so blind? He prided himself on his intuition, his ability to read people. Yet he completely missed the infidelity happening right under his nose. No more. Mira had made a fool of him for the last time. Straightening up, Landon pulled out his laptop. If he was going to take Mira down, he needed to be smart about it. Legally, financially, socially. He'd strip away everything she valued, piece by piece. As he began researching divorce lawyers, a new text came through. It was from his friend, Derek. Hey man, you free to grab a beer? Need to talk to you about something. Landon hesitated, then replied affirmatively. Maybe getting out of the house would help clear his head. And who knew Derek might have some useful insight. An hour later, Landon found himself sitting across from Derek in a dimly lit bar. His friend looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his beer bottle. What's up? Landon asked, taking a swig of his own drink. You seem pretty serious on the phone. Derek sighed heavily. Look, man, I don't know how to say this, but I think Mira might be cheating on you. Landon's grip tightened on his glass. What makes you say that? I saw her last week with a guy I didn't recognize. They looked close. Derek winced. I wanted to tell you right away, but I wasn't sure. I thought maybe it was just a misunderstanding. It wasn't, Landon said flatly. Derek's eyes widened. You knew? Found out today. Landon drained his beer, signaling for another. Tell me everything you saw. As Derek recounted his observations, Landon's suspicions solidified. The man Derek described matched one of the lovers from the photos. I think I know who he is, Landon said grimly. Remember that asshole from the marketing department? The one who tried to sabotage my big presentation last year? Derek's jaw dropped. No way. That piece of shit? Landon nodded. Looks like he found another way to screw me over. Jesus, Landon. I'm so sorry. Derek shook his head. What are you going to do? A dangerous glint appeared in Landon's eyes. I'm going to destroy her, Derek. Her and anyone else involved in this mess. By the time I'm done, Mira won't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. Derek leaned back, a mixture of admiration and concern on his face. You're serious? Aren't you? Dead serious. Landon's voice was cold. She chose to play with fire. Now she's going to get burned. As they continued talking, Landon learned even more about Myra's web of deception. Derek had heard rumors of her flirting with several of Landon's business rivals, men who had long sought to undermine him both personally and professionally. The betrayal cut deeper with each new revelation. Mira hadn't just cheated. She'd systematically targeted people connected to Landon's life. Whether for thrill-seeking or more nefarious purposes, the result was the same. She'd made a mockery of their marriage and everything he'd worked for. By the time Landon left the bar, his path was clear. He would take control of this situation and exact a revenge so thorough, so calculated, that Mira would never recover. As he drove home, Landon's mind raced with possibilities. Financial ruin, social isolation, professional devastation. He'd strip away every aspect of the life Mira had built on lies and deceit. Pulling into the driveway, Landon took a deep breath. The house loomed before him, no longer the warm haven it had once been. Now it felt like a monument to betrayal, every room tainted by Myra's infidelity. He stepped inside, greeted by the lingering scent of Myra's perfume. Landon's fists clenched at his sides. Soon, that scent would be nothing but a bitter memory. Tomorrow, he'd begin putting his plan into motion. But tonight he'd allow himself to grieve for the life he thought he had. The love he believed was real. Landon climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. In the bedroom, he stared at the framed photos on the dresser, smiling faces, happier times. With a sweep of his arm, he sent them crashing to the floor. Glass shattered, the sound echoing through the empty house. Landon stood amid the wreckage, chest heaving. "Game on, Mira," he whispered into the darkness. "You have no idea what's coming." The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting harsh light on Landon's haggard face. He hadn't slept, spending the night poring over divorce laws and plotting his revenge. His phone buzzed another saccharine text from Mira. "Morning, handsome. Missing you tons. Can't wait to be home tomorrow." Landon's grip tightened on the phone, every word a lie. He forced himself to respond casually. "Miss you too. Have a safe trip back." Setting the phone down, he pulled up the contact information for Talia Reeves, a ruthless divorce attorney known for her take-no-prisoners approach. It was time to get the ball rolling. An hour later, Landon sat across from Talia in her sleek downtown office. Her sharp eyes scrutinized him over steepled fingers. "So, Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice clipped and efficient, "you believe your wife has been unfaithful." Landon nodded grimly. "I don't believe. I know." He laid out the evidence, the photos, the letters, the burner phones. Talia's eyebrows rose incrementally as she examined each damning piece. "Well," she said finally, "you've certainly done your homework. What exactly are you looking to accomplish here?" Landon leaned forward, his voice low and determined. "I want to destroy her, Ms. Reeves. Financially, socially, professionally. I want her left with nothing but the consequences of her actions." A small smile played at the corners of Talia's lips. "I think we can arrange that. But let me be clear. This won't be pretty. Are you prepared for the fallout?" "I'm prepared for anything," Landon said firmly. "Just tell me what I need to do." For the next 2 hours, they meticulously crafted a strategy. Talia guided him through the process of discreetly transferring assets and canceling joint credit cards. "We'll file the divorce papers," she explained, "but keep them under seal for now. The element of surprise is crucial." Landon nodded, taking detailed notes. "And legally? How do we ensure she can't touch anything?" Talia's smile turned predatory. "Leave that to me, Mr. Caldwell. By the time I'm done, your wife won't know what hit her." As he left Talia's office, Landon felt a grim sense of satisfaction. The wheels were in motion. Now he just had to maintain the facade until everything was in place. Over the next few days, Landon threw himself into preparations. He moved money, canceled cards, and gathered more evidence, all while playing the role of doting husband to a T. When Mira returned from her trip, he greeted her with a hug and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Welcome home, honey," he said, helping her with her bags. "How was it?" Mira launched into an elaborate story about spa treatments and girl talk. Landon listened, noting every inconsistency, every nervous glance. "Sounds wonderful," he said when she finished. "I'm glad you had fun. What about you?" Mira asked, running a hand down his arm. "What did you get up to while I was gone?" Landon shrugged casually. "Oh, work mostly. Caught up on some cleaning." Myra's eyes flickered briefly to the hall closet. "Cleaning, huh? Anywhere in particular?" "Just the usual," Landon lied smoothly. "Why? Was there somewhere you wanted me to focus on?" No, Mira said quickly. "Just curious. You know how I love a tidy house." Landon fought back a sneer. "I bet you do," he thought, "especially when it comes to hiding your dirty secrets." That night, as they lay in bed, Mira snuggled up to him. "I really did miss you, she murmured, her hand trailing suggestively down his chest. It took every ounce of Landon's self-control not to recoil. Instead, he gently caught her hand. "I'm pretty wiped, babe. Rain check." A flash of irritation crossed Myra's face before she masked it with a pout. "Of course. Get some rest." Landon turned away, disgust churning in his gut. How many times had she touched him like that after being with other men? The thought made him sick. As the days passed, Landon continued his meticulous planning. He worked closely with Talia, ensuring every legal and financial base was covered. Meanwhile, he maintained a facade of normalcy at home, all while gathering more evidence of Myra's infidelity. One evening, about a week after Myra's return, Landon decided to set the next phase of his plan in motion. He casually mentioned a work dinner to Mira, knowing full well she'd take the opportunity to meet one of her lovers. Sure enough, the moment he left, Mira was on her phone. Landon parked down the street, watching as she emerged from the house dressed to kill. His jaw clenched as she climbed into an unfamiliar car. Following at a discreet distance, Landon tailed them to an upscale hotel downtown. He snapped photos as Mira and her companion, a man Landon recognized as a business rival, entered the lobby. "Gotcha," he thought grimly. The next morning, Mira was all smiles over breakfast. "How was your work dinner, honey?" she asked, buttering her toast. Landon took a sip of coffee, his eyes cold over the rim of the mug. "Enlightening," he said. "How was yours?" Myra's hand froze midair. "My what?" "Your dinner," Landon said casually. "I assume that's where you went last night. Unless there's another reason you got all dressed up and left in a strange man's car." The color drained from Myra's face. "Landon," I held up a hand, cutting her off. "Save it. I know everything, Mira. The affairs, the lies, all of it." Myra's eyes darted around wildly, like a cornered animal. "It's not what you think," she stammered. "I can explain." "Oh, I'm sure you can," Landon said, his voice dangerously calm. "You've always been good at explanations, haven't you? But I'm not interested in your lies anymore." He stood, tossing a manila envelope onto the table. It landed with a heavy thud, spilling photos and letters across the pristine tablecloth. Mira gasped, her trembling hands reaching for the damning evidence. "Where did you get these?" "Does it matter?" Landon asked coldly. "What matters is that I know the truth now. About all of it." Tears welled up in Myra's eyes. "Landon, please," she begged. "We can work this out. I love you." "Love?" Landon scoffed. "Is that what you call fucking half the men in my professional circle? Is that what you call betraying every vow we ever made?" Mira flinched at his harsh words. "It was a mistake," she whispered. "I never meant to hurt you." Landon laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "Well, congratulations. You failed spectacularly at that." He turned to leave, pausing at the doorway. "Oh, and Mira? I'd start packing if I were you. You're going to need a new place to live very soon." With that, he walked out, leaving Mira sobbing at the kitchen table. Over the next few days, Landon's plan kicked into high gear. He filed for divorce, the papers landing on Mira like a bombshell. She tried desperately to reason with him, alternating between tears and anger. "You can't do this," she screamed during one particularly heated argument. "I'll fight you every step of the way." Landon remained impassive. "Go ahead," he said calmly. "But I wouldn't count on getting very far." As the reality of her situation set in, Myra's desperation grew. She tried to access their joint accounts, only to find them frozen. Her credit cards were declined when she attempted to book a hotel room. "What have you done?" she demanded, storming into Landon's home office. He looked up from his computer, unfazed. "I protected what's mine," he said simply. "Something I should have done a long time ago." Myra's face contorted with rage. "You bastard. You think you can just cut me off like this?" "I think I can, and I have," Landon replied. "You made your bed, Mira. Now you get to lie in it. Alone." As Myra's financial ruin became apparent, Landon moved on to the next phase of his plan, social isolation. He carefully compiled a dossier of Myra's infidelities, the photos, the letters, the hotel receipts. Then, using an anonymous email account, he sent the information to their closest friends and family members. The fallout was swift and merciless. Myra's phone blew up with angry messages and accusations. Friends she'd known for years now refused to speak to her. Even her own sister sent a scathing text. How could you do this to Landon? He loved you. You're disgusting. Landon watched from afar as Myra's social circle crumbled. She tried desperately to explain, to make excuses, but the evidence was damning. One by one, people turned their backs on her. At a neighborhood barbecue, one Mira hadn't been invited to, Landon overheard the gossip firsthand. "Can you believe it?" whispered Sarah, their next-door neighbor. "And with so many men. It's revolting." Her husband, Mark, shook his head. "Poor Landon. He deserves so much better." Landon accepted their sympathy with a grim smile, playing the role of wronged husband to perfection. Inside, he felt a cold satisfaction. Mira was reaping what she'd sown. As the social fallout continued, Landon moved on to the next target, Myra's lovers. Using the information from the burner phones, he systematically contacted their wives and girlfriends. Anonymous emails, carefully worded text messages, each one a ticking time bomb of betrayal. Landon watched from the shadows as relationships imploded left and right. One particularly dramatic confrontation occurred right on their front lawn. Landon was trimming the hedges when a red-faced man stormed up the driveway, a petite blonde woman hot on his heels. "You home-wrecking bitch!" the woman screamed as Mira opened the door. "How dare you sleep with my husband?" Mira stumbled backward, shock written across her face. "Allison." The slap echoed through the quiet neighborhood. Landon winced despite himself. "Save it," Allison spat. "I've seen the pictures. You're nothing but a cheap slut." As the drama unfolded, neighbors peeked out from behind curtains. Landon caught more than one pitying glance thrown his way. He nodded solemnly, playing up the role of stoic victim. That night, as Mira nursed a glass of wine and an ice pack, she turned to Landon with red-rimmed eyes. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Why not just divorce me and be done with it?" Landon regarded her coolly. "Because you don't get to walk away from this unscathed," he said. "You chose to destroy our marriage. Now I'm choosing to destroy everything you hold dear." Mira shrank back, truly seeing the steel in his eyes for the first time. "I never knew you could be so cruel," she whispered. "I never knew you could be so deceitful," Landon countered. "I guess we're both learning new things about each other." With Myra's personal life in shambles, Landon set his sights on the final frontier, her career. He'd saved the most damning evidence for last, explicit photos and videos that left no doubt about Myra's infidelity. Using another anonymous email account, he sent the material to Myra's boss and key members of her team. The subject line was simple: "The real reason behind those closed-door meetings." The response was immediate. Myra's phone rang barely an hour later. "Hello," she answered, her voice wary. Landon couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but Myra's face told him everything he needed to know. She paled, then flushed an angry red. "You can't be serious," she hissed into the phone. "That's my personal life. It has nothing to do with my work." Whatever her boss said next made Mira deflate like a punctured balloon. "I understand," she said quietly. "I'll clean out my desk tomorrow." As she hung up, Mira turned to find Landon watching her from the doorway. The look she gave him was pure venom. "Are you happy now?" she spat. "You've taken everything from me. My friends, my reputation, and now my job. What's left?" Landon stepped closer, his voice low and intense. "Now you know how it feels," he said, "to have everything you believed in ripped away. To realize your whole life was built on lies." Mira crumpled to the floor, sobs racking her body. For a moment, Landon felt a twinge of something. Not quite regret, but a flicker of the love he'd once felt for her. Then he remembered the box in the closet, the photos, the letters, the years of deception. His resolve hardened once more. "I'll be by tomorrow to pick up the last of my things," he said, turning to leave. "I suggest you start looking for a new place to live. The house goes on the market next week." As he walked out the front door, Landon felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The plan he'd set in motion weeks ago was finally complete. Myra's life lay in ruins around her, just as she'd shattered his world with her betrayal. He climbed in his car, casting one last glance at the house they'd once shared. It was over. Mira would face the consequences of her actions, and Landon would rebuild. Stronger, wiser, and finally free from the web of lies that had entangled him for so long. As he drove away, a small, grim smile played at the corners of his mouth. Justice, cold and unforgiving, had been served. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the living room as Landon methodically packed the last of his belongings. Each item he placed in the boxes felt like another link in the chain of his old life breaking away. He paused, holding a framed photo from their wedding day. Myra's radiant smile mocked him now. With a decisive motion, he dropped the frame into the trash. The sound of shuffling footsteps made him turn. Mira stood in the doorway, a ghost of her former self. Dark circles ringed her bloodshot eyes, her hair a tangled mess. "You're really leaving," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Landon nodded curtly. "I told you I would be." Mira took a hesitant step forward. "Landon, please. Can we talk about this? There has to be a way to fix." "Fix what, exactly?" Landon cut her off, his tone sharp. "The years of lies? The multiple affairs? The complete betrayal of everything we built together." "I made mistakes," Mira pleaded. "Terrible mistakes. But I love you. Doesn't that count for anything?" Landon laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Love? Is that what you call it?" He advanced on her, eyes blazing. "Let me tell you what love isn't, Mira. It isn't sneaking around behind your partner's back. It isn't lying to their face day after day. And it sure as hell isn't sleeping with half the men in town." Mira flinched as if he'd struck her. "I know I hurt you," she whispered. "But what you've done, it's cruel, Landon. You've destroyed everything." "No," Landon said, his voice deadly calm. "You destroyed everything. I'm just making sure you face the consequences." He turned back to his packing, dismissing her. But Mira wasn't finished. "How did you do it?" she asked, a note of desperation in her voice. "How did you manage to tear apart my entire life so quickly?" Landon paused, considering. Then he turned, a cold smile playing at his lips. "You want to know? Fine. I'll tell you." Over the next hour, Landon laid out every step of his plan. He described finding the box in the closet, his meticulous gathering of evidence. He detailed the legal maneuvers that left her financially ruined, the calculated strikes against her social circle and career. Mira listened in horrified silence, her face growing paler with each revelation. "My God," she breathed when he finished. "I never knew you could be so ruthless." "There's a lot you never knew about me," Landon replied. "Just like there was a lot I never knew about you. Funny how that works, isn't it?" Mira slumped against the wall, looking utterly defeated. "What happens now?" Landon hefted the last box onto his shoulder. Now I leave. And you get to live with the mess you've made." As he reached the door, Mira called out one last time. "Will you ever forgive me?" Landon paused, his hand on the doorknob. For a moment, the weight of their shared history pressed down on him. Then he straightened his shoulders, resolve hardening once more. "No," he said simply. "I won't." With that, he walked out, closing the door firmly behind him. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings and property negotiations. Landon threw himself into work, using it as a shield against the whispers and pitying looks that followed him everywhere. One afternoon, as he was leaving the office, he ran into Derek. "Landon," his friend called out. "Hold up a second." Landon paused, allowing Derek to catch up. "What's up?" Derek shifted uncomfortably. I heard about everything that went down with Mira. Man, I'm so sorry." Landon shrugged. "It is what it is." "Yeah, but—" Derek hesitated. "Don't you think maybe you went a little overboard? I mean, I heard she lost her job. All her friends. She's basically been run out of town." A flash of anger surged through Landon. "Overboard?" he repeated, his voice dangerously low. "You think what I did was overboard?" Derek held up his hands placatingly. "I'm just saying maybe—" "No," Landon cut him off. "You don't get to say anything. You have no idea what it's like to have your entire life blown apart by someone you trusted completely." He stepped closer, jabbing a finger at Derek's chest. "Mira didn't just cheat on me. She systematically betrayed me with people who wanted to destroy me professionally. She lied to my face for years. She made a mockery of everything we built together." Derek swallowed hard, taking a step back. I didn't realize. No, you didn't, Landon snapped. So don't stand there and tell me I went overboard. Myra's lucky. All I did was ruin her life. Some men might have done much worse. Without waiting for a response, Landon stormed off, leaving a stunned Derek in his wake. As he drove home, Landon's conversation with Derek played on repeat in his mind. Had he gone too far? For a brief moment, doubt crept in. Then he remembered the box in the closet, the photos, the letters. His resolve hardened once more. No, he'd done exactly what needed to be done. The final confrontation came sooner than Landon expected. He was at home, sorting through some paperwork, when a pounding on the door jolted him from his concentration. Landon, Myra's voice, shrill and desperate, carried through the wood. I know you're in there. Open up. For a moment, Landon considered ignoring her, but a perverse curiosity won out. He wanted to see the final result of his handiwork. He opened the door to find Mira swaying slightly, her eyes wild and unfocused. The smell of alcohol wafted off her in waves. Well, Landon said coldly, you look like hell. Mira laughed, a high, brittle sound. Funny how that happens when your entire life falls apart. She pushed past him into the house, stumbling slightly. Landon sighed, closing the door. What do you want, Mira? She whirled to face him, anger and desperation warring on her face. What do I want? I want my life back. I want my friends, my job, my reputation, everything you stole from me. Landon's eyes narrowed. I didn't steal anything from you. I simply exposed the truth. The truth? Mira spat. You call what you did the truth. You manipulated everything. You turned everyone against me. I didn't have to try very hard, Landon replied evenly. Your own actions did most of the work. Mira advanced on him, jabbing a finger at his chest. You're a monster. You know that? A cold, calculating monster. I never thought you had it in you, and I never thought you could betray me so completely, Landon shot back. I guess we're both full of surprises. For a moment, they stood toe-to-toe, the air crackling with tension. Then Mira deflated, all the fight draining out of her. Why? She whispered. Why did you have to destroy everything? Wasn't divorcing me enough? Landon's jaw clenched. No, it wasn't. You didn't just cheat on me, Mira. You systematically betrayed me with men who wanted to ruin me professionally. You lied to my face for years. You made a mockery of our entire relationship. He took a step closer, his voice low and intense. So no, divorce wasn't enough. I wanted you to feel a fraction of the pain and humiliation you put me through. I wanted you to lose everything, just like I did. Tears welled up in Myra's eyes. I never meant to hurt you like that, she whispered. But you did, Landon replied, unmoved. And now you're living with the consequences. Mira slumped onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. What am I supposed to do now? I have nothing left. Landon regarded her dispassionately. That's not my problem anymore. He moved to the door, holding it open. I think it's time for you to leave. Mira looked up, a flicker of the woman she used to be shining through. Is this it then? Is this really how our story ends? For a brief moment, Landon felt a pang of something. Not quite regret, but a bittersweet acknowledgement of what they'd once shared. Then he remembered the box in the closet, the years of lies, and his resolve hardened once more. Yes, he said firmly. This is how it ends. Goodbye, Mira. As she shuffled past him, Mira paused in the doorway. I really did love you, you know, she murmured. In my own way. Landon's expression remained impassive. Your way wasn't good enough. With that, he closed the door, leaning against it as he listened to Myra's unsteady footsteps fade away. It was over. Really, truly over. In the days that followed, Landon threw himself into rebuilding his life. He moved into a new apartment, focusing on work and slowly reconnecting with friends who had distanced themselves during the drama. One evening, as he was unpacking the last of his boxes, he came across the wedding album he'd thought he'd thrown away. Hesitantly, he opened it, thumbing through the pages of smiling faces and happier times. A knock at the door startled him from his reverie. He opened it to find his lawyer, Talia, standing there with a thick envelope. It's done, she said without preamble, handing him the package. The divorce is final. All assets have been divided as per our agreement. Landon nodded, a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying lifting from his shoulders. "Thank you, Talia. For everything." She gave him a rare smile. "You're welcome." And Landon? "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Some betrayals can't be forgiven." After she left, Landon sat at his kitchen table, staring at the envelope. Inside were the final documents severing his tie to Mira. With steady hands, he opened it, scanning the legalese that officially ended his marriage. As he read, a news alert popped up on his phone. Curious, he opened it, then felt a jolt of surprise. The headline read, "Local woman found dead in hotel room, apparent suicide." The article went on to detail how Mira had been discovered by housekeeping, an empty bottle of pills by her side. A note had been found, apologizing for the pain she'd caused and expressing deep remorse for her actions. Landon sat back, a storm of emotions swirling through him. Shock, anger, a tiny flicker of grief, but not guilt. Never guilt. He picked up his phone, hesitating for just a moment before dialing. "Talia? It's Landon. You're going to hear some news about Mira. I need your advice on how to handle this legally." As he listened to Talia's calm, professional assessment of the situation, Landon's gaze fell on the wedding album still open on the table. With a decisive motion, he closed it, sliding it into the trash. The past was over. Mira had made her choices, and now, in the most final way possible, she'd face the consequences. Landon refused to let her last act taint the new life he was building. Later that night, as he stood on his balcony looking out over the city, Landon felt a sense of calm settle over him. The storm had passed. The lies had been exposed. Justice, in its cold, unforgiving way, had been served. He thought back to the man he'd been just a few months ago, trusting, naive, blind to the betrayal happening right under his nose. That man was gone, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and far less forgiving. Landon raised his glass to the night sky, a toast to lessons learned and a future unburdened by deceit. "To new beginnings," he murmured, "and to never being anyone's fool again." As he turned to go back inside, Landon cast one last glance at the city below. Somewhere out there, Myra's body lay in a morgue, her final act of desperation a footnote in the story of their shattered vows. But Landon felt no remorse, no second-guessing of his actions. He had done what needed to be done, had exacted a revenge so complete that Mira had seen no way out. It was a harsh lesson, perhaps, but in a world where trust could be so easily betrayed, where love could be twisted into a weapon, sometimes harshness was the only language people understood. Landon closed the balcony door behind him, shutting out the night. Tomorrow was a new day, the first of many in a life no longer defined by Myra's betrayal. He was free, and he would never let anyone hold that kind of power over him again.